Good morning. Sorry, 1 second. Good evening, everybody. This is Ryan Miller. I am the founder of Parent Dome, which is found at parentdome.com. Tonight I am running my evening simulcast that I am broadcasting on TV at Nissan Communications. For those who want to participate there, they can call in at 919-518-9773, or you can come in via Skype, and you can Skype at Computers2K Voice. I also am broadcasting on Periscope. For my Periscope audience, good evening to you. And I am also on Blab, and Mr. Amnon Nissan will be taking any questions or comments that may come through the Blab audience. So good evening to all. I want to first disclose that when I am on live stream broadcasting, that most of these platforms allow for an age, which is 13, and many people are under 13 that participate in my broadcasts. So I ask that behavior is appropriate with those age limits, and that the language that is in the communication is not profane. So it's a profane-free experience. So I make my Periscope audience aware that by clicking on the little Perry dude down below in the bottom right-hand corner, you can open up my profile and you can see this link, which is bit.ly/PD Scope Terms of Service. This is the terms of service for how I manage my live stream broadcast, both on Blab, Periscope, and soon Meerkat, that I ask people to abide by those terms. I ask for a contributory dialogue and not disruptive behavior. Disruptive behavior will be removed from the broadcast. Also, because I do deal with minors in various levels of awareness of the dangers, risks, and threats of the permanence, they may be experiencing very traumatic things in their experience on the internet. And because I am broadcasting across multiple platforms, I cannot intervene directly with them or talk directly to them. So I make available this link as well for those that have a trouble in reaching out to their parents, those reaching out to a teacher, a counselor, a youth pastor, a coach. If they do not have that ability, this is a list. It's a PDF download which provides toll-free numbers for kids to find who they need to talk to immediately. And I'm going to exemplify why this is important in just a moment. And also, because there is a lot of bad behavior that is not visible to many, children are acting out, adults are acting out. There's a lot of live streaming and driving happening. If you happen to see broadcasts in either of these platforms, particularly on Periscope, where somebody is scoping and driving, or they're on Blab and driving, I ask that you tweet that out. You can share it through Periscope, or you can share it through Blab via Twitter, and you just type in this hashtag #NotAnon. Lets people know that those broadcasts, that people are doing things against the law and putting others at risk and danger, that they are not anonymous. That if they want to have the visibility of social media and broadcasting while driving, we will empower them to give them a broader audience. Sounds a little strange, but what we do in that situation when we see somebody live broadcasting and driving, there are people that will interact in that broadcast and say, listen, you may want to pull over off to the side of the road and not broadcast because you're going to be putting people at harm. You're distracted. And we try to ask them to stop. And believe it or not, that has been a rather favorable response, that people, when they encounter people talking about them while they're scoping and driving, that they will pull over. They will stop the broadcast. Not everybody, but it does have a positive impact. So I also changed my lights in the background for a certain reason, because I just celebrated today my 500th broadcast on Periscope. So that's a pretty significant milestone in the community of live broadcasting to have done 500 broadcasts. Jamie, it's good to see you tonight. Trey, it's good to see you. Mac, also. Some of the other people, I have not recognized you coming in, but I say thank you. Yes, it is 500 is a big milestone. So my Periscope audience, I'm going to go over here and address this other audience for a moment. On Nissan Communications, if you desire, you can communicate through text or through a phone call. You can dial in at 919-518-9773 or at Computers 2K Voice, and or you can chat in the Blab in the comment area as well. So today I wanted to bring an awareness to the broader audience in the social media platform as to some significant things that transpired in this past week. So I reside in the Mid-Atlantic states, and we were blessed with an abundance of snow over the weekend. So there was a lot of fun activities related to the removal of snow, the playing in snow, but also the ripple from that is that schools in the Mid-Atlantic were closed from Monday, Tuesday, some of them until Wednesday. And what happened during that school closure time was an increased activity in the social media sphere, particularly in the live streaming community, where children were sitting home bored. Their parents still had to go to work, but the children are stuck home. So what would they do? They would go and they would get on the live streams. They would get on Meerkat. They would get on Blab and be annoying on Blab. They would get on Periscope. And there was a meme that was going through. It's like the children thought they were being creative, but the creativity became incredibly redundant. And what we saw emerge in the live streaming platform was a celebration of prank phone calls. So the prank phone calls were going off the hook, that there were anywhere from 10 to 20 broadcasts running at a particular time all day during the school day when kids were locked at home. And then there was another genre of young teenagers that were doing other things which were beyond the pranks, that they wanted to build their live stream celebrity, and they were baiting people to come into their broadcast and encouraging certain behavior, that they would offer something if you did something. There was a tremendous amount of truth or dare going on, and then there was something that was beyond that truth or dare. Sorry, I have to block someone here because they chose not to abide by my terms of service, but that's okay. So that was one thing that was happening. There's just an abundance of these children just exploring the power of social media, getting lots of people to come in, and it wound up being rather scary and dangerous. And this hashtag was getting filled up from people sharing. Oh, wow. Sorry about that. So it's unfortunate that some of the people in my social media, the Periscope audience, can see this kind of behavior that I often refer to as disruptive behavior that happens to an adult broadcaster, happens to children too. They can see it real time and how I deal with it. These other audiences, you cannot see the disruptions that come in, that I have to interrupt my conversation and remove those people from the broadcast. It's very unfortunate. Yes, somebody's making a comment that they've seen a lot of prank calls, people smoking dope, and they were seeing some other interesting broadcasts happening. That, and somebody has recognized that when I broadcast that I change my location settings, and they're saying, hey, you're broadcasting right next to me. And that's one of the benefits of having the knowledge and wisdom of broadcasting on live stream, that there's no reason for anybody to know where I am broadcasting from. So my location right now is pretty creative, I thought, that I'm in the plunge pool of the Niagara Falls, right between the border of Canada and the United States, right outside Buffalo. Now, you can't do that on all technologies, but because of what I do and how I do it, I'm very visible to an audience that doesn't want my message to go out there. So I have to purposefully mask where I broadcast from. So moving forward in the week, I was sharing with Amnon prior to coming onto the show that I was doing my daily routine on Tuesday, and a notification came up on my computer of a friend of mine that was going to broadcast on Blab. And the topic was very interesting, so I needed to finish up what I was doing because I wanted to go in and participate and listen to what he was talking about. So it took me 10, 15 minutes, and then I go into his Blab session. And as I pop into the room, he sees my name pop in, and I'm hearing him having a conversation with a black window with a very young child's voice. And he says, oh my gosh, Ryan, I can't believe you're here. Can you come in right now? I'm like, oh my goodness. So I click on the seat, I come into the window, and what we're engaged in is a conversation with a minor girl who is about 14 years old. I shouldn't say about, she was 14 years old. She was in tears, she was crying, she was desperately seeking help from a grown-up relative to something in her photos that were going out virally through her school. There were pictures of her while she was taking a shower in the school, and they were just being broadcast all over the place. And I'm sorry, those people that are coming in for the first time into this broadcast may not be aware of the terms of service, but I just do want to make you aware that if you click on my terms of service below, you can get an understanding as to how I manage my broadcast. So there are things that I respond to, there are things that I do not respond to. So that's okay. So she was crying and she was devastated because these photos, she had left her phone in the changing area because she wanted to listen to music while she was taking a shower. So during that time, somebody went up to her phone, was able to type in her password, which, believe it or not, her password was 0000. They were able to take a photo on her phone while she was in the shower and take that photo and share it out on social media. So it looks like she did all of this stuff. Hold on a second, sorry. So I don't know what is true or what is not true. And it's not my place to judge, but she was in a real problem. So we were talking about how to fix this with her, and it required several steps. But I said, you need to go to your parents. And she said, I went to my parents, they don't believe me. And I said, how can your parents not believe you? She says, they think I'm making this up. And unfortunately, her emotion was so raw that regardless of whether she made it up or not, her emotions were telling us there was something really bad going on and she needed help. Her parents were not there to help her. So normally I would say, you need to go to this and get some help and talk to somebody. But she didn't have that ability. So it was myself in that seat at that time that needed to do something. So I talked to the gentleman that was holding the blab and I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a private broadcast in a different platform that doesn't have the ability to record. We don't want any ability of this being public and we don't want it being recorded. I want to have this young girl come in. She did not come on screen. She didn't have the ability to come on screen. She was just on audio, decoration. So I brought her into another platform. I continued to talk to her. I was giving her stuff in text. And what I did is I memorialized my conversation in text and I forwarded it to, oh gosh, how many people am I speaking to? Great question. I'm talking to my Periscope audience, I'm talking on a live TV show, and I'm also talking on another platform, Blab. So it's a multicast. Sorry about that. So in this private conversation, I was talking to her, I was texting, I was screen capturing, and I forwarded this to her Twitter account. So she had a record of what I said. One, to protect myself, and two, to protect her and giving her the instructions on what she needed to do to fix her problem. So one of the steps that needed to be taken was we needed to take all of the photos off of her phone. And I asked her, does she have an iCloud account? Does she have the ability that she can put these onto a laptop or something? And she said yes. So I navigated her through how to download the photos from her phone to her laptop. Here's something that was a little surprising. It wasn't surprising to me, but it was surprising to others I shared this story with. There were over 2,000 images on her phone because the last time she did a backup was 10 days before. So she accumulated 2,000 photos in 10 days. And in those 2,000 mix of photos were these images that were captured while she was in the shower. And they had gotten shared out on social media. So the first thing that we were doing is we were taking the photos off of her phone and we were putting them over onto an area The other thing that we did, which is a very difficult conversation, is that we needed to clean her social media profiles because they had used her social media profiles to put these out. I'm sorry, I don't speak that language. I only speak English. My issue, not yours. So she was very upset that she was going to have to do a new Instagram, a new YouNow, and a new Snapchat account. She was very upset because she had lots of followers and she had a lot of people that paid attention to her on those social media platforms. And I said, honey, I know this is horrible. This is totally horrible, and I understand that. But what's more important to you right now? Your followers and your account on Instagram, or you stopping these images from going any further? And she said, no, I don't want the rest of this city to know what happened. And I said, then we really need to look at that. If you start a new profile, you can start that up. She was 14 years old, 14-year-old girl that did this. And her parents didn't know what happened. So what happened was all of those photos went to her computer, which took about 4 hours for all of that data to get over her, because it was a combination of photos and videos worth of 10 days worth of material, 2,000. Unbelievable. Remember I say selfies on teen girls are at the rate of 100, 200, 300 per day? That's what we were looking at, 200 per day. I'm sorry, I'm doing multiple broadcasts, so I can't necessarily go and repeat some of this stuff, but what I'm talking about is how I intervened in helping a young girl that had something bad happen to her with her social media and photos. So the photos went onto her computer. They, in turn, we got rid of her social media profiles. We actually did a factory reset on her phone because she had some other concerns about, that would be great, thank you. Had some other concerns about maybe some virus and or spyware had gotten on her phone, and I said, this is how we do it. So I gave her instructions. And I said it would even be better if you took your phone to the local cellular store and had them help you through this process. But she was able to do that, cleaned off the photos, restarted her phone, rebooted it, and that she is now clean with a fresh start on social media. Now, unfortunately, she has a series of photos that went out there. And I believe her that she didn't do this. It sounds like somebody did it and took advantage of her. But that is all she had. And now she's clean. And now she stays in touch with me as to make sure she's safe. This all happened inside of her parents' home. Her parents were home when all of this was happening. But unfortunately, the parents weren't involved in this conversation, and this other parent stepped in to help. So that was one thing that happened this week. But there was another thing that happened this week that I got pulled into. And I was very pleased to hear somebody else involved with what I'm involved with. Because I have been teaching and training and educating and cautioning people on live stream platforms about these dangers and how do you get involved in these and how do you be someone that can influence, or do you want to be somebody that advocates? I make people aware of the dangers themselves that can blow back on you. So this week also, there's a very well-known person on Blab and on Periscope. His name is Ed Brophy. He was on Periscope. Sorry. He was on Periscope, and there was an 18-year-old boy. This Ed Brophy's on the West Coast. He's in California. He found a broadcast that was titled, "Should I Commit Suicide?" He was broadcasting from Connecticut. The young child he was an 18-year-old young man, had his location settings on, but his camera was blacked out. You couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. But he's having a conversation. In this broadcast, there were over 100 people in this broadcast interacting with this child. He was talking about taking his life. Ed Brophy got into this broadcast and is interacting with this child to, no, life is valuable, talk to him. But a third of the audience was encouraging this child to take his life. A third of the audience in Periscope was pushing to force this child to end his life. Now, I bring this to light that not to scare anybody. I'm just sharing the reality of what is happening in this world on social media. And Ed just encountered one thing, and this was not strategically looked for. He just stumbled across it. So what he did is he drilled into the location settings and drew in further and further, was able to find the location, went through the directory, called the police. Took him 6 phone calls in order to get to the dispatcher, and it was a bunch of back and forth because the dispatcher is not aware of these live streaming platforms. They don't know what he is. Why is a guy from California calling somebody in Connecticut to intervene with somebody that's threatening suicide in Connecticut? That makes no sense. In the internet, it makes total sense. But the law enforcement officers are not aware of how far this is reaching and how many people can be advocates across the world to help and intervene. So I am so thankful that Ed was persistent. And he was able to get a hold of the police and convince them that they need to go and dispatch. And they dispatched a ambulance. They were able to intervene prior to that child making a conclusive decision. And you know what happened? He was broadcasting while he was in the ambulance. He was broadcasting after he was intervened with, but he was broadcasting in the ambulance as he was going away, trying to let the people know that he has been rescued or what. I didn't see the broadcast. It was too much. It had already been taken down. But Ed Brophy has the screenshots and the evidence and his history and the phone calls of everything he did. He offered to share it to me because he was doing one Periscope, and I said, Ed, let me pick up on the trails of what you're talking about, because I talk about this all the time, about how to participate in those conversations. Absolutely. Somebody said it's a mental issue, and yes, it is. People that have watched me on various platforms understand how I treat this type of behavior, how I therapeutically insert myself as a non-therapist to have a conversation with people to help, because there are sphere of care, sphere of concern, sphere of influence. Sphere of care is my family, my friends, my very dear friends. My sphere of concern is those that know me. My sphere of influence is sitting across the bar having a conversation with somebody. It's just a conversation. I have no ability to stop anybody from doing anything in a social media platform. I don't have that power. I have the power of writing a text. And if I have a whole slew of people that are fighting against my text, I will be removed from the conversation. I will be blocked by the person broadcasting, like that 18-year-old child. If those people had convinced them that I was less important than those other people that want him to end his life, that I would have been blocked from the conversation. So there has to be a level of patience, love, tolerance to go into that fight, and not everybody is equipped to that. So I talk to people, if you are going to go into that domain, into the underbelly of what is happening on live stream, and peek and open the door and walk into the room and you see it, how do you handle it? Because I did a broadcast just recently. She hit her girl on Musical.ly, and she hit herself because a guy made her get naked and threatened. That is another application, and oh my gosh, I thank you for sharing that, because I do know that there are other applications that are seemingly harmless, but you put another spin on it and they are not so harmless. So good evening, thanks for joining over on Periscope. That I did a broadcast earlier today. I thank you very much for that, Mac. He's saying my sphere of influence grows each time I do a broadcast, and that's a very loving thing to say. But my broadcast, I think it was this morning, I said, if we are participating in social media, there comes a point that if we're using the tool, that's great. And if we're not engaging with the tool, that's something else. But live streaming has a level of engagement which is different than typing a text or sharing a funny story. And there's a whole culture in the live streaming community, and people use it for business, but they also use it for socialization. It is very, Cynthia is asking, why is the young generation on Periscope so negative and confrontational? And it's a reasonable question. But I'm gonna address you in just a minute, Cynthia, because my broadcast was like, are we who we claim to be? Because in our society right now, I shared the story of the young woman in Miami that got into a fight with an Uber driver. This is a degreed college student that got her doctor's license. She was practicing medicine at a local hospital. She had a bad day. She went out and got liquored up, and she came out and she got into the wrong Uber, and she was getting into a fight with an Uber driver. Now, her friend was standing there video recording her behavior. But she went off the mental reservation and was kicking and trying to swing and hit the guy in the face. She got into the car. Oh, Uber it's a kind of a taxi, but it's not a traditional taxi. Uber is a platform where you can order a taxi. So she got into this altercation. She got into this person's car and trashed his car, all while her friend videotaped it. Now that video has been seen over 5 million times. That mature woman has lost her job at the hospital because of the viralness of that video. Her friend stood there recording it. So I say that we have gotten a society now where we're driving down the road and there's a car accident, and sure, there's a lot of people that are going to rubberneck. They're going to slow down traffic and rubberneck. You've got another set of population which is going to stop, get out of their car, and video record it. And there's going to be bodies hanging out of the room, out of the car, with wounds with blood spurting. But there's a very, 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 very small percentage of people that are going to get out of the car, rip off their shirt, take off their belt, put a tourniquet on that person, and get involved to save that person. There are signs saying, in case of fire, leave the building before posting on social media. That is hysterical, but that is so true. Recording, we never had a record before. We don't need 10 records. We need somebody to intercede. So the Good Samaritan has been killed and replaced by the camera. So this young woman's future could have been modified if her friend had put the camera in his pocket and stepped between her making a poor choice and attacking the Uber driver. But he thought it would be more interesting to record it. Who are we based upon who we claim to be? Are we going to rubberneck? Are we going to photo? Are we just going to watch? Are we going to get involved? Now, I'm not suggesting anybody is any one particular way. But I know for me, when I go on a broadcast and I see something bad happening, I try to put my 2 cents in to stop it. I don't own the result or conclusion of what happens inside that room, because that's someone else's child. It is someone else's child that is there at risk of making some poor choices that's going to affect their life permanently. It's not my child. But I'm willing to invest a little bit of time to influence that child to the point that they may get some reason to turn off their location settings or get some people out of that room by blocking them, or they may block me. And it happens half and half. Half of them say, leave me alone and block me, and the consequences are going to be where they follow. So Stacy asked earlier, and I wanted to get back to Stacy's question, why are people behaving this way on social media? And there's multiple reasons behind people's behavior. And I'm going to say that, first of all, that I'm going to address this topic from speaking life, love, and hope. And I'm going to give you a scientific answer that comes from the therapist's office. The therapist, the number one thing they talk about when you get into the therapist's office with the child is the attachment to this internet, whether it be through video gaming, whether it be through social media, whatever it is. The internet, the social media device is a huge draw It's like a pet to the child. The relationship is stronger than a pet. They'll let the pet crap in the house before they will separate themselves from the phone. So, first thing is, social media has no ethic nor morality. Yes, to answer your question. There is no ethic or morality tied to behavior on social media. Secondly, it's backed by anonymity or a perception of anonymity. Third is the behavioral component. The behavioral component is when you have anonymity, you feel that you can say anything that you want and there's no consequences for it. That's why I make people aware of my terms of service. You do have the freedom of speech, but you're not free from the consequences of how you may use that speech. So when we have people that have this perception of being anonymous, they're going to stretch themselves for their behavior. Now, I say when people are in pain, they're not getting attention, they're not liked, they don't have a lot of friends, to mask this pain, they will go out and do something to get more attention, whether it be positive or negative. Also, if that pain comes from people bullying them and hurting them, one way to mask that pain is to bully others and make others feel bad. Now, this is not me. This is coming out of the clinician's office. I'm paraphrasing what they're telling me, the psychologist, psychiatrist, and the therapist, and the social workers. Great question. What does it say about all of us watching you right now? Well, there's a portion of the people that are listening to me that understand my messaging, that I'm talking about how to keep kids safe in a digitally immersed life, one, and I'm talking to caregivers about how to increase your awareness, what kind of oversight and what kind of controls in the relationship between your child, the device, and the internet. You, the device, the child, and the internet. We shift it. Awareness, oversight, controls. The awareness is some of the things I'm talking about in the beginning of my conversation is in that awareness domain. So if people want to participate, I appreciate my Periscope audience asking questions here. So that's very cool. For Nissan Communications Group, you're welcome to call in at 919-518-9773 or come in on Skype at Computers 2K Voice. And the Blab audience, you can also chat something in the chat roll, and Amnon will ask me that question. So when we start from the premise that this behavior, whatever it is, profane, argumentative, disruptive, when that behavior is happening, I approach that behavior being disruptive from the perspective of these people are in pain. They need help. Their words, their actions, as inappropriate as it is an outward manifestation of a hiding from an internal internal pain. So when we start from that premise, that disruptive behavior in my environment, I'm going to love on those people. I'm going to hold them accountable for who they are. That's okay, Shailesh. There's a lot to take in. This is just one broadcast, and I do this frequently. So you don't need to take it in one bite. It's not one bite to take. So when we start from that premise, and when I am teaching that this behavior, even though it's bad, is coming from children in pain. And those children are not orphans, they're somebody's child. As that 14-year-old girl that I was intervening with, her parents were home. The 18-year-old that was going to commit suicide, he was in his home with his parents. Not orphans. They're doing things in the privacy in their room. They're doing the privacy of somewhere else, but it's in the same house as their parents. In the beginning of the week, the parents weren't home and the kids were experimenting and doing other inappropriate things, but it was still inside the home. So I choose to take the approach that I'm going to love these people. I will do what I can to intervene with them to help them change their path. The examples that I gave are, the real, is real world. And I suggest that if we are adults and we're participating in social media of any degree, we see this behavior ourselves. So the other thing that I was doing relative to this was that there were some people with the mindset that they wanted to be the people at the car wreck that would get out of the car and shred their shirt and take off their belt and tend to those that are wounded. And I said, you don't tend to the wounded unless you have had the training to tend to the wounded, because you could create more harm than pain. So being there to encourage them is a great thing. If you had to watch everything, I would say you'd have to live a million lives. That's very true. I would. So I'm not a paramedic. I've had training and I can do certain things, but there's certain things that I cannot do. I'm not going to do CPR on somebody because I haven't been appropriately trained recently to do CPR, and I could kill somebody by administering CPR incorrectly. So that's not something I would insert myself to do. So for those that are going into the social media domain, particularly live stream, to communicate with people that are going down this path, there's two things you need to be aware of. One awareness is, how do you manage that communication to keep it going as long as you can to maximize your ability to get to influence, knowing you're going to have a whole audience that wants to shut you up. And the other side of that equation is the audience that wants to cause you pain. And that is based upon what their technology competencies are and how bad and how much pain they're in. So there is this whole thing about cyberbullying, and cyberbullying is an epidemic in our country, absolutely epidemic. And there are one group of people that want to shut the cyberbullies up, not aware of how much backlash they can get by engaging and prodding and condemning the cyberbully. When you confront somebody that is in this pain, it will get worse. So I'm going to come to my next story that happened this week. That my various audiences are familiar with what happens behind my board here. And many of them have been with me for a while to see a particular individual that started out bad. I intervened. He participated in my conversations and made a different choice. He was a disruptive person that got blocked. I took him through my process and he made a different decision. And he started making a wise choice and wound up listening to my broadcasts and wound up being kind of an advocate. Then this child made another poor choice, not on my Periscope platform, but on the Blab platform. That he came into a Blab broadcast with two young ladies, and he had done something sexually inappropriate with an image on a live broadcast in a business broadcast. And that wound up getting shared on Twitter, and it wound up being a very traumatic experience for him, because he and his friends made a poor choice on a social media platform that got hugely distributed. Because the woman that he had violated said, you want to be famous? I'm going to make you famous. You want to troll on here? I'm going to let people know what kind of troll you are. Because it identified who he was. It was identified to his name and his Twitter. And it went out. And he got famous off of that. And it got famous through me, and it was attached to me because he had been in my broadcast before. And this, that's not typed right. It's blocked lives matter. That is a function within Periscope that when people are disruptive, that I block them and those lives matter to me. And this particular story I'm telling right now is one of those people that was blocked, that I worked with to help make better choices. He began making better choices. He came into Blab. He made a poor choice. It went out all over Twitter. He's got a permanent record now on Twitter of that. But I had a conversation with him after that. I had a conversation with his parents after that. I offered them the resources of Parent Dome to help them. But I told the mother that he was no longer allowed to participate in my broadcasts. But this child felt that he was unjustly judged by me for his actions. and he would go set up another account and come into my Periscope. I would find out it was him, I would block him. He would go set up another account, he'd come back in. And he did this 6, 7, 8 times. He did it to me on Blab. He set up a bogus account on Blab and was yelling at me in another public forum, and somebody else blocked him on Blab. And what I did is I sent an email record to his mom, and I said, Mom, listen, I'm just doing this for you. I had promised that I'm not going to insert myself into your family dynamic, and I'm just going to keep you aware that when your son comes into my broadcast, I'm going to continue to block him. And that when he does other comments on my social media platforms, I'm going to screenshot his comment, my response, and give it to you. Because if there comes a time that you need additional resources to go to wherever you need to, you have an inventory of it. I am not judging you one bit. I am not. I'm just letting you know how I handle it. So several emails went by, and the mom emailed me back. And she said, Ryan, I really appreciate what you're doing. Ryan suffers from blah, blah, blah. And understanding that we have been having a real hard challenge in dealing with him and the social media, we appreciate you letting us know when he's on there. We've taken that away from him, but if he does get back on, would you please let us know? He suffers from this brain disease, and it's very expensive. It's cost us over $50,000 for these various treatments in schools and therapy. And the quality of care is very low, and the healthcare system is so burdensome, and we just can't find the right resources. And she said, I really appreciate you not judging me, and that the best thing you can do is to keep doing what you're doing and just let us know. Now that touched me because it's consistent for me. And I sent an email back to her and I said, listen, I am not judging your son's character either. I'm not judging his behavior. I understand that you've got much bigger things going on in your world, let alone what he's doing to me or others on social media. In the scheme of things in your life, this doesn't even ping the radar, because I can't imagine what you have to deal with. But here's what I will tell you. If you and your psychiatrist and the psychologist say that your son's participation with me, based upon the way I deal with it, is beneficial to him, I am willing to have that conversation and allow him to come in. But we are going to define the rules. I don't need, if it is in his best interest to come back in because of who I am and what I am doing and speaking about this message, and it resonates, he needs to have this kind of adult supervision, which is not his parents, I will do that. It's worth the conversation. And that is, I am not his parent, and I don't want to get in the way of his parents, and I don't want to get in the way of her, the mom, or the dad. But if they need additional resources to help their son navigate this path, and I am in the path to do that, why would I not do it? There's no reason why I wouldn't do it. I would explain to my live streaming audience, listen, there's a therapeutic component of what I do here. Of all the people that listen to my broadcasts, I've got a diverse audience. I've got those that are disruptors that are just listening to what I say and say, wow, this guy's got some truth in there. I've got parents in there that they have children all over the spectrum. All family dynamics are unique. And that if I can touch any one life, people are asking, shall we all just muddle through, same as we've always done? The only downside, muddling through doesn't work as well as it did in the past, because muddling through didn't have the consequences of permanence that the internet now provides. Before, a broken bone is a broken bone and you heal. Before, stitches are stitches, you get a cut, you get repaired, and you're good. But what happens with the internet now is you've walked into a tattoo parlor and you're getting a face tattoo. And that face tattoo doesn't come off. Because when you make that decision to do something on the internet, that is a permanence on you that you can't scrub off. And everywhere you go for a job, for an interview, that tattoo is revealed. Now, people will say that maybe that tattoo won't be visible. But if you're in certain professions, they will go through the investigation and find out. And they'll reveal that tattoo. So if there's anybody that wants to bring any comments from Blab and or from Nissan, that would be great. You can communicate on Nissan at Computers 2K Voice on Skype or dial in at 919-518-9773. And people are saying it's knowing all about the consequences. Unfortunately, children do not have the ability to see into the future to know what the consequences will be, because they have the knowledge, and knowledge comes at a very young age. The parents are putting technology in children's hands at 4, 5, 6 years old, so they're building their knowledge right away. But one thing they don't have that their parents, it's incumbent upon their parents to help teach them, is wisdom. And wisdom doesn't form in the brain until 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. It's something that doesn't happen until much later in their development. It's okay. Then if you don't want me to explain this stuff, and I've bored you at this point, you have a choice. You can stay and listen, or you can go find another broadcast. That's totally fine by me.
Hey, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
Michelle on Blab is saying, thanks for the great information.
Well, it's my pleasure, Michelle. And let me just add something else in here that's really important, and I'm going to address this to Michelle, even though I can't see you at the moment. I am not judging at all. As the woman in her email said, thank you for not judging. And that's truly, that is where my heart is. There's no judgment, because as parents, we are teachers. We teach our children language. They don't learn language other than from us. So we are teachers. But there's a time where we hand the teaching off to a certain degree to an institution. But we still hold on to some of the teaching ourselves that may be part of the morals and ethics and how you may deal with faith in your own family. But I don't offer any judgment in that domain, because I know the dynamics are so diverse. But the other piece is that parents can only know what they know. They can't know what they don't know. So I come here and I say, I'm just offering you my hand to say, there's a lot of stuff that you may not be aware of, and I'm not judging you for not knowing this, because there was a lot of stuff I didn't know in my journey, and I'm thankful I had people that spoke truth and love to me as I went down the path that I went down. But there's two things that happen partly through my conversation with adults. And I'm speaking this as honestly as I can, and this is non-judgmental, but there's a feeling that stirs inside of parents based upon what I say that stimulates this fear that they're a failure. Now, those words don't come out of my mouth, but that's kind of the emotional response that happens within parents, that hearing the things that I say, they say, I'm failing. Now, where that is emanating from is an internal criticism. You have an internal critic that is taking what I'm saying, filtering it, and being hypercritical of who you are based upon nothing I've actually said, but you're criticizing yourself. And that inner critic, relative to this issue, needs to be evicted. Just for this conversation. You can let that inner critic come back and take residence if you choose. But for this conversation, get the inner critic out, because none of those words came out of my mouth. I'm not judgmental. You can only know what you know. You can't know what you don't know. And I say you've done a great job. But I'm going to say that there are other things that are happening out there outside your visibility, your awareness, and 94% of parents say it's not my child. But the reality, it could be your child, because we have to look at evidence to make any statements which are factual. And the evidence requires an investigation. And most people are obliged by limiting the amount of screen time that a kid is looking at a screen, or they're looking at where their children's history profile is. And those two things are saying how long I'm on a device and where do I go. It's not acknowledging the capability that the child may have deleted the history, or they're going incognito and they're only letting you see history they want you to see. They have knowledge, don't necessarily have the wisdom. So I'm saying even that history doesn't tell you what they're doing in that domain. You're not seeing the comments, the likes, the shares, the texts, on and on and on. So I'm saying the evidence comes from seeing what your child is actually doing, what applications they're involved in, and what that application experience looks like. Now, here's another emotion that comes in. What the other piece, I'm seeing some other comments come in, and some are off topic and some are on topic. The other piece that parents feel is that what I say requires a tremendous amount of work and energy and time. And I would be lying to say it's not going to take some time, because it takes some time to understand, then it takes another bit of time to oversee, and it's another time to implement. That's very true. That somebody made a comment, which I was just agreeing with. But me sticking my hand out and says, I will help you down this path. My university at ParentDome.com is built in a way that you can consume it as needed. Modules. Frank, good to see you, my friend. Different modules, and you can pick at it based upon where your child is, what is pressing in their world, and it all begins, when I say the awareness, oversight, and controls, but there's a conversation, a dialogue that takes place between your significant other, then a conversation with your child, then a conversation with your child to see how they use their technology, but it's all based upon this platform. Speak life, speak love, speak hope. That I have no desire to stop your child's activity on the internet or disconnect them from the internet. Absolutely, exactly the opposite. Because I believe the internet has some very powerful tools to help children. But it has to be appropriately governed based upon where they are chronologically, psychologically, emotionally, and what their level of responsibility is. I've talked about this before. There's two different parenting styles. Laissez-faire, just let them go and wander and let the consequences follow. And the helicopter parents, which are just overbearing, repressive. And I'm to say that either extreme is a little harsh, but I'm saying that we all can benefit by operating with the benefit of both and navigating based upon our child's behavior and time and experience. That I will give my child freedom, give them freedom, and I will manage their visibility to allow them to stumble and fall, or I will interject to prevent them from that fall. But if they do fall, I bring them back, and now I'm repressed. And I execute that punishment and hover before they can establish that responsibility to go back and have that freedom again. So I don't judge either side of the spectrum. There's no judgment, because we blend based upon where we are and where they are. So I speak this from a position of love, that I deal with this disruptive behavior on a daily and hourly basis on social media. I am called and texted and DM'd and tweeted to come in and rescue children. I've had 2 of them happen during this broadcast right now, to go in and participate and help somebody in trouble. The social media platforms don't have a police system. The police don't have a process to deal with them. The social media people, the broadcasters themselves, are don't deal with this block. But there's a guy here, me, and others which I encourage, that are trying to get those children and help them. And I promise you those children are not orphans. And I know my message is difficult, but I'm going to take one other brief side note, is that I have offered the Parent Dome University of Information, and I presented it a couple of times at ParentDome.com. And that has been an offer, and I had it identified as a limited time offer. And I appreciate those people that have taken advantage and received the benefit of that are part of the Parent Dome family. That limited offer is expiring at the end of this month. And that's not a pusher pull. That's not a promotion thing at all. I'm just redoing the format and I'm doing a relaunch on February 1st. And it's just going to have some additional tools and resources and access to information that had not been completely open before. But this new launch on the beginning of the month, and I'm not promising February 1st because I have some couple of things to happen, but that in the beginning of this month, it's that initial offer is going to close down. It's going to be new offer. Hopefully that'll be more attractive to people as well and meet their needs more, because there's visual, auditories, and kinesthetics, and I want to help somebody get a little bit of everything. And I'm going to be launching a cell phone app that will have my lessons be able to be consumed on an app along with my other broadcasts. So I just wanted to make that announcement. My backdrop is back behind me funny because I'm celebrating my 500th episode. And just one last thing. Something happened within my family, and I wanted to give you this personal glimpse, and my Periscope audience saw it happen real time. So I've shared that my daughter has ADD, and she has a challenge keeping her room clean, her bathroom clean, her bedroom clean. And as long as there's no biology experiment going awry, give her a lot of latitude in that. I'm not going to have stalactites and stalagmites growing out of the bathroom tub or out of the sink, out of toothpaste. But there are certain things we're going to allow because of the way we need to do what we need to do to manage our life. But I had said to her that you need to clean up the bathroom and you need to clean up your bedroom. And I had given her an 1.5-hour window, which under my normal cleaning regime with her is I need to sit down with her in her room and tell her, sweetie, you need to fold this, put this away, fold this, put this away. And sorry. And then I knew that 1.5-hour time frame, and she says, Dad, if I get it done in an 1.5 hours, will you do a challenge to your Periscope audience? And I'm like, what are you thinking? She says, no. If I complete what you asked me to do, can I give you a challenge that you have to do with your Periscope audience? And I looked at the bathroom, I looked at her bedroom, an 1.5 hours time frame, and I thought, not a problem. So I didn't even go bother to check to see if she had done it because I knew there was no way she could do it. So she's at school yesterday, and she texted me and she said, Dad, did you check my bathroom? I said, no. How'd you do? She said, go take a look. So I go upstairs and take a look at the bathroom. The bathroom is clean. I mean, clean as she would make it, but it was better than she would normally do it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's great. And she said, did you go into the bedroom? And I said, no. I'm telling a personal story right now about, this is not the main topic I talk about. You're coming at the tail end of my conversation. So I go into the bedroom and the bedroom is clean. And I am absolutely in shock. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm so happy and proud of her. And she says, Dad, now you have to do the challenge. I'm like, okay, that's fine. What were you thinking? She said, you need to put peanut butter on your beard and have the dog lick it off. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. And you need to do it on Periscope. I was like, now, we do silly, kind of crazy, funny things at our house, and it's all for fun. And because at the teenage years, they want to be grown up, but at the same time, they want to be kids. And that's a difficult balance to figure out when they are what. And so this was one of those times that she wanted to be that little kid. But when she got into it, she wanted to be that older kid. So yesterday afternoon, I sat down on the floor. She painted my face with peanut butter. I laid down, and the dog licked my face. Now, I got to tell you, it was gross, and it was a bit disturbing. It was not right. I did it because I was honoring my relationship with my daughter and what she did, and she could have asked me to do anything, and I would have done it because I was so proud of her, because this was one of the ways that I was able to motivate her. But that video was on Periscope yesterday, and it was a laugh, and people to see another side of me, to see my interaction with my daughter, and the part of the joy of parenting, even though some of it is really, really hard. I get a serendipity every once in a while, and it came at the cost of my dog licking my face with peanut butter all over it. Big whoop. So thank you all so much. I'm going to wrap up here, so everybody have a great night. and have an enjoyable, safe weekend, and I will see you next week on Nissan Communications. Thank you so much. All right, so I think...
You're tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.